Ready?
Oh, you can do it whenever you want because remember I can piece together things.
Okay.
So.
All right. Hey everyone, it's Hannah. I wanted to quickly ask if you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It goes a long way in getting the show in front of other listeners. If you listen on a platform that doesn't do reviews, please follow us on social media, like the show, or leave a comment. Thank you. We love you guys, and we hope you enjoy the show. You're listening to The Tales We Tell, a podcast about spooky stories, unsolved mysteries, and local lore. I'm your host, Hannah Parch.
And I'm Katy. I almost forgot my life. I had my eyes closed. I was just listening to you. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, I'm supposed to say something there.
One day we'll mess it up real bad.
Yeah, it's been a while, so we're due.
I know.
The fact that we make it through whenever we do a little swapsies.
I know.
A tell we tale is impressive.
I know. Good grief. Well, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, because this is airing the day before.
The day before.
But I guess at this point, because even if you're hearing the day that it comes out, even our Patreon listeners, it's also a belated birthday to my dad.
Oh, happy belated birthday.
He turned old today.
Nice.
No, he's been old.
Yeah, you know. It happens. Doing anything special for him?
I called him 2 days in a row. Because I called him last night to just chat because we hadn't talked in a while. And figured he would, Walker was in a real chatterbox mood. So I figured he'd get a kick out of listening to Critter just jabber on.
Right.
And then I looked at my phone this morning and I was like, I looked at the date and I was like, oh, today's my dad's birthday. I totally did not realize it. Like, it just completely escaped my mind when a few days ago, I was like, oh, my dad's birthday's coming up. And then just, I guess, being, all the stress of like, okay, gotta go out of town. Gotta, we're going to the cabin. Gotta take care of all these things. And my mind was just there.
Yeah.
So.
Easy to lose track of things.
Yeah.
It's been also wild down here. Well, I'm going to open this present that you gave me, which is the best thing to do on a podcast, is open.
We love doing visual things here on our audio podcast.
Ooh, American Ghost Stories. It's a book, I should clarify. Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's this little shop called the Republic of Floyd in Floyd, Virginia, which is a town near our cabin. So we love going into this town. And it's a neat little shop. It's kind of like a everything shop. So, like, there's some gifts and, knickknacks and stuff, but there's also, it's also kind of a bottle shop.
Yeah.
So there's, lots of wine and beer, but then there's also snacks and, like, meal solution things. Like, I was like, ooh, this, like, Indian meal thing, like, I think it's one of those, like, just add chicken or tofu or whatever, protein you want, and then kind of mix it and heat it. And then there's a cooler full of, like, cheeses and other snacks, and I don't know, it's a neat little place, and the lady who owns it's real nice, and they had several books.
Nice. And
so I was between the American Ghost Stories, which I ultimately went with, and there was one about fairy tales, too.
Oh.
So I was considering that one. Maybe next time we go back, I'll get that one if it's there.
Nice. I love this. It also has, like, recommendations in the back. A selection of fantastic reads. A range of gothic novels, horror, crime, mystery, fantasy, adventure, dystopia, utopia, science fiction, and more. Available and forthcoming from Flame Tree. Nice, thank you. I'm going to read this in my parlor, which I recently renovated.
Your pretty parlor.
My beautiful green parlor. It was a... Jeez.
I'm sure it was a thing. It was an endeavor.
It was a whole thing, but it's done. Okay, I have 2 announcements before we start. The first one is more of a shout out to our friend Maddie, because she and I bonded recently.
Over pimento cheese?
No.
Which was really good, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. It's almost gone. There's the tiniest little bit left in my refrigerator. We bonded over our mutual disdain for water bugs. She messaged me while she was listening, and that we had a whole conversation about how evil they are. Her experiences, I think, have been worse than mine, because she said that one attacked her from the air in the dark right after she had watched Poltergeist, which at least both of my aerial attacks recently were like in lit rooms.
That seems like an experience Maddie would have.
Yeah. And also they didn't actually hit me. They just landed near me.
Did I ever tell you about the time that I woke up in the middle of the night because one was crawling on my legs under the covers in my bed?
No.
This was years and years and years ago.
Oh my gosh. No.
Back when I was living in New Orleans.
Okay. My next announcement is we got a correction or affirmation, because I don't remember how I actually pronounced it, from Amanda on how to pronounce the town in Illinois where Richard Speck grew up. It's pronounced Monmouth, which I think I probably was saying it wrong. I think I said Monmouth.
And I think I said
Monmouth.
Monmouth.
And we might be...
maybe it was a correction and an affirmation. I don't know.
True. And Amanda said she went to college there. I was like, how are you so connected to this show? I feel like she's got something like that for everything.
Her feelers
yeah,
and everything.
She's like, I feel like for every story, or like every other story, she's like, I grew up down the road from there. I have a cousin from there. Yeah. I went to college there. I lived there for 3 months. I'm like, how?
My best friend is from there.
Yeah. I'm like,
I lived across the street from that serial killer.
I know.
Delightful.
I would love to know, Amanda, if you are connected to this story in any way.
It's just so funny to think of. She's like, okay, don't take this the wrong way, but like Forrest Gump. You know how he's like on the fringes of like all these major historical events? He's just there living his life, kind of completely oblivious to all these things that he's just kind of present for.
Yeah,
and...
just like in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of sounds about right.
She's like the Forrest Gump of our show.
Yeah.
But,
and
not mentally handicapped.
Yeah. I was going to say in a good way, but Forrest, of course, was a great character. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't read the book.
I haven't read the book either, but I've seen the movie.
I often forget that there's a book. Yeah, I don't know. Some people, like, love to hate that movie.
Really?
Yes.
I have never met anyone who hates that movie.
Some people, like, and it's especially, like, the snooty, like, I think I'm a film critic people.
Oh, jeez.
But I'm like, I mean, it's Tom Hanks.
It's a good Tom Hanks movie.
Like,
get over it. Also,
I mean, I'm not saying it's, like, an important piece of cinematic culture, but, like, it's Tom Hanks. How do you hate anything that he's in?
I also learned and this, of course, was probably not everyone's opinion, but in high school, I took a class that was specifically about the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we had to do in the class was, like, not pair up with, but, like, you kind of got assigned a Vietnam vet that you would, like, interview and talk to and just, like, learn from. It was a really cool class.
I mean, very interesting, yeah.
And this was, I guess, in 2011 or something.
In high school? You graduated before
Sorry,
then.
2006 or 7. God, I was thinking college.
You would have in 06, 07, you would have been like a sophomore or junior.
Yeah, sophomore or junior. Because I did not realize, side note, until like a couple weeks ago, when they were honoring vets at a football game, I did not realize how long ago, currently now, Vietnam was, until they had some Vietnam vets out there. And I was like, those guys look like what I imagined World War II vets to be. because they're like 90. And then I was like, oh, wait. The 60s were a long time ago.
I still think of the 80s as 20 years ago.
Same.
Instead of 40 years ago.
Yeah. So.
Because I was technically born in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh. Anyways, what I remember from that class and from, I don't know if it was my vet who told me this, but I learned that a lot of vets said that Forrest Gump was one of the most realistic depictions of Vietnam out of all of the movies that have been made about the war. They said that part in Forrest Gump where he's
and it was literally like a 5-minute section.
They're like, it's not a movie about it, but of all the movies out there that are like that depict the war, Forrest Gump does it right. And I was like, wow, that's weird.
I mean, I think the simplicity of how they described it is like, it rained. Yeah. And then it stopped raining. And then it rained some more. And then we blew up.
Yep. Yeah. I still can't believe some people don't like legs. Lieutenant Dan. I know that, Forrest.
No, that was Bubba. I can't feel my legs.
Oh.
They ain't there.
Wait, did Bubba lose his legs?
He lost like his whole bottom half. He dies.
Oh. I forgot about that. I thought we were talking... Well, he does tell Lieutenant Dan, you ain't got no legs. And he's just, I'm aware of that, Forrest. Great movie. I might rewatch that.
Yeah. Maybe that should be our first movie of movie night.
I know. It would be a good one.
Except movie night has to start at like 7:30.
That's fine with me.
7:30 is a late time to start a long movie like Forrest Gump.
Oh, yeah. That is a long movie. Okay. Okay. You ready?
Because we have it on Laserdisc, and it is 2 discs.
Oh my gosh. All right, you ready?
Let's do this.
Okay. I have today an unsolved mystery for us.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you the story of a young man named Joshua Maddux.
I like the name Maddux.
Nice. I like the name Joshua.
Me too. My cousin's name is Josh.
Oh, nice. Well, you have a dossier.
Woohoo!
And your first picture is, or your first page is just several pictures of Josh.
Aww.
I know.
He's a cutie. And he looks like he belongs in Hanson in that first picture with the hair.
I love these because every picture is different, but I feel like they all give a really, like, look at them as I tell you about him.
Okay.
All right. So he was born March 9th, 1990.
He what now? He has Critter's birthday?
And my birth year. So
he's a few months older than you.
Yeah. So he's like our age. So this story, like, this is going to be...
I bet he was super popular.
Yeah, right?
Because he looked like he belongs in Hanson.
He grew up and lived in Woodland Park, Colorado, which is a small town in Pikes National Forest, about 20 miles west of Colorado Springs. And he had 3 older siblings, Zachary, Kate, and Ruth. Josh was really well liked by his peers. He loved music and nature and animals. He was a really good student in school. He had, according to his sister, a really high IQ, so he was really smart. One quote about him was that he challenged people in their way of thinking. He would spend his free time in nature or writing music or short stories or playing his guitar or just like making new friends. And he had a really like goofy personality. So, for example, one time he dressed up in a choir robe at his school and snuck into one of their like concerts. I guess just to pretend he was in the choir. And then like another time he interrupted a class president debate and just declared himself a candidate. And then I feel like we all knew this kid too. He, at school, according to what I read, would wear a top hat and carry a briefcase instead of a backpack.
Yeah. I didn't know that kid.
Yeah. But he wasn't the weird kid that no one liked. He was the kid that, he was the weird kid that everyone liked.
He pulled it off.
Yeah.
He pulled it off. He was amusing. It was more class clownish than Well, who's the weird kid with the briefcase?
Yes, true. Okay, so on June 1st of 2006, Josh's older brother, Zachary, very unfortunately committed suicide. And it was really sudden and very surprising to the family because they either didn't know or did not know how bad his depression was. And I read I don't know if this was his official obituary, but on, like, have you ever gone to, I think it's findagrave.com or something? Well, it'll show you, like, where a tombstone is or whatever, and usually it has an obituary, and who knows if it's the one that's printed in the paper, but Zachary's said something about he had a depression that was I wish I had written it down. It said something about, like, it was unbearable and unachievable or something.
Unsurmountable.
Yeah, something.
Insurmountable.
Something just very sad, but they made it clear that it was very sudden and very unexpected to the family. And he and Josh were very close, and so Josh took it really hard, but he pushed through it and was actually, like, according to his family, doing pretty well despite, like, this horrible thing that happened, and he was able to kind of find the joy in life again. Did you find it?
Not his. I was testing it by looking up my grandmother's.
Oh.
So I found my grandmother since she recently passed, and I actually have recently read her obituary, so I know what it's supposed to be. Yeah, it has her birthday, the day she died, her age, 98, Oakdale, Tennessee. It has where she's buried. It also... Oh, wait, here we go. Here's the obituary. And there's my name misspelled.
Oh, no.
And then it also has my grandfather.
Oh.
My grandfather he has pictures and he has gravesite details. His wedding anniversary. His parents and their graves.
Wow.
And his siblings. But I don't see his... Oh, there's records on Ancestry.com. There's no memorial. Or no obituary thing.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was trying to remember, it says Zachary succumbed to an unreasoning depression against which he had no defense. Which I thought was a really just... I don't know. I think it's a beautiful way of saying that, but also just very sad. Because I feel like a lot of us know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Okay. So this terrible thing happens, but Josh is able to push through and find, kind of a normalcy again. 2 years later, on May 8th of 2008, Josh is going on a walk. So this is a normal thing for him. He tells one of his sisters, I'm just going to go for a walk in the woods, which is near their house. So he leaves from their home and he is gone for a very long time. And he didn't come home that evening. But apparently that wasn't super unusual for him, because I guess sometimes he would just camp in the woods. Or maybe, go stay at a friend's house. I don't know. They just said it wasn't super, super out of the ordinary for him to not come home.
Or maybe, not so much that he didn't come home, but maybe they all went to bed before he came home.
Yeah.
I'd be worried.
Yeah. The following morning, he still wasn't home. And they began to contact his friends, and no one had seen him. And so May 8th is when he left home. It's not until May 13th that his dad calls the police, but He says that he was trying to contact all of his friends first. They were looking...
Which, yeah, because that's what the police are going to say anyway.
Yeah, and
They're going to treat him as a runaway.
Exactly. The police were very quick to say, well, he's 18. He probably just ran away from home. Also, he's an adult. Like, he can do what he wants.
So we're not going to care.
But they did, like, make a report as a missing person. They did do a search for him. Official searches lasted months, and they did not find any trace of Josh in the woods, around the house, on the roads, or anything. His case kind of, like, officially, per investigators, went cold, although he was still listed as a missing person, and kind of, as far as they were concerned, he was a missing person who could have just run away and just didn't want to be found. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what his family told themselves, was that maybe he had just run away. His sister Kate said that he had kind of hinted at this a couple times. A quote from her says, "He always told us that he was going to have a great adventure and that he may not talk to us for a while. When he said a while, we thought maybe a few years." And then this is a quote she gave, I think, to a newspaper later on. "Since Josh was 18, it has been reasonable to assume he may have decided to leave town to start a new life. As one of his two sisters, I have always believed this was the case. I have expected Josh to return home to my father's house at any time with a wife and small children so that they can meet their grandparents and 2 aunts. Josh has always been known for his musical and literary talent, so maybe we would find him playing music with a band on tour or catch him writing successful novels under a pen name so that he could keep his preferred lifestyle of solitude in the woods."
That's a very interesting relationship that they must have, to just kind of like, oh, I kind of figured that he would just go off and we'd see him again with a wife and children. Like,
yeah,
sure, but at least say you're gonna leave. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think...
Don't just walk out the door one day and never come back.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cool. Be like, all right, I'm going on my adventure. Or leave and then call or send a letter or something. Be like, by the way, I'm
okay.
I'm on walkabout. I'll come home eventually. Like, even if you never do come home, like, just say what your intention is. Don't leave people hanging like that.
And I think very much that this was something that she was telling herself as a way of not letting herself believe the worst.
And how many years later, like, after he just left, did she give this quote?
I'm actually not sure.
Because, like, if it's right after, then that's odd.
Yeah, it's not right after.
But if it's been, like, 5 years, then, yeah, I totally see, telling yourself this and just to give yourself some closure, since you don't have any, like, he just up and vanished.
Yeah.
And there's not a trace, no word from him since. I absolutely would 100% just be like, you know what? Nothing bad happened to him. He's okay.
Yeah.
This is just how it is.
Yep.
I wish him the best.
Yep.
I'm not going to grieve.
Yeah, exactly. So she is telling herself that. Josh's father never stopped looking for him. And he may have also, been telling himself that he was off doing something.
But like, looking for him. Like,
yes.
Oh, like, let me look through... musicians or whatever.
Yeah, so he would look at homeless shelters. He would look at campgrounds. If he was in a crowd of strangers, he would be looking at everyone's faces, seeing if he recognized his son. Especially, like, years later, you're imagining, like, what his face might look like now, 5 years older or so. And then even after Mike and his wife got divorced, Mike stayed in their home thinking that if Josh ever came back, he would come back to that house. Right. And he wanted to be in the same place. So fast forward to August 7th of 2015. And a man named Chuck Murphy, who is 80 years old, of Colorado Springs, was having his old wooden cabin demolished on Meadowlark Lane, just a few blocks from the Maddux house. And that is your next picture, is a picture of that cabin.
Is it a murder cabin?
I don't know. You decide if it looks like one.
Well, I mean, seeing as how part of it's like semi-demolished.
I know. It hadn't been used since 2005, so 10 years. And it had fallen into disrepair, as
I'd say
buildings tend to do.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you just leave them there.
Mm-hmm. Chuck was going to use the land for property development, so he needed to get rid of this building. But as workers began dismantling the house, they made a discovery.
A gruesome one, I'm sure.
Yes. They found a partially mummified body crammed into the chimney.
He did not put himself there.
Well,
maybe.
I'm going to do my best to... Actually, I'm going to let you help me figure out the position that he was in, because I read every description that I could, and I'm still not 1,000% sure. Okay, so a lot of descriptions said that it was the fetal position with a hand covering his face. But then some said that the body was bent in half, like with nose to knees, with the hands and feet facing the top of the chimney, like butt down, hands and feet up.
So, like, he was sitting on the chimney and then
fell down.
through.
Yes. But a Denver Post article quotes the coroner as saying his feet were down. So that makes me think the opposite of what I just said. Several sources said that if he had entered the chimney, he would have had to do it head first. But I don't know if they meant if he entered the chimney from the top or from the bottom.
Well, I guess it depends on where in the chimney he was found. Was it down near the bottom, near the top, somewhere in the middle?
I think he was found closer to the bottom. I will say Chuck did mention that, like, they were demolishing it when they found him.
Right.
And so he's like, it could have been dislodged. It may,
Yeah, he could have moved.
It could have moved. A grunge article said that, quote, the knees were positioned above the head as if he was, quote, trying to get into the cabin through the chimney head first and got wedged inside. I'm going to read that again. Trying to get into the cabin through the chimney head first and got wedged inside. Knees positioned above the head.
So he's upside down.
Okay, but how do your knees get above your head? Oh, wait, like, okay.
Yeah,
so just
by your head being here and your knees are up there. Because...
Right. Okay, but then how is he in a fetal position also?
See, that's... Well, it also could be that he didn't die in that position, but over time may have moved.
Okay. I've got one more.
Because gravity?
Yeah. One more quote on the position. Quote, the knees were above the head, but the legs were dislodged. The body was upside down in the fetal position. Because of the heavy machinery used to peel back the chimney, the position of the body was found in may not have been the position the body was in before. So the knees were above the head, but the legs were dislodged. The body was upside down in the fetal position.
Okay, so I got you here.
Okay, thank you.
So he's upside down like this,
Okay.
basically in the fetal position.
Okay.
His knees are still above his head, so my head is towards the bottom.
Okay.
So hold on.
Okay. Okay. Yes, that makes much more sense. Thank you. Wow, I forgot how human bodies work.
It's alright, sometimes when I'm reading my smut books, sometimes I just get so distracted, I'm like, so how do they contort to, like, because how did he do that? Because a second ago he was like, what kind of acrobatics are they doing There are times that I literally have to go back and read. I'm like, did I just read through that too fast? And like I skimmed and missed some details? Because when the heck did they get into that position? Like, you can't do that from that other position that I thought they were in. Or can you? Shelton!
Oh my gosh. Okay, that made a lot more sense now that I saw it visually. So, what Katy...
You're welcome. That's what you pay me the big bucks for.
Yes.
I'm surprised you didn't get a picture for the Instagram.
I know. What Katy just did was essentially get on the ground and, like, do a shoulder stand, but then curled her knees up
to my forehead.
like she was in the fetal position. So, imagine that, but put a chimney around her. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. All right, so... The body was also only wearing a thermal shirt. No other clothes. However, the rest of those clothes, so shoes, pants, underwear, were folded and sitting next to the fireplace inside the cabin.
So I don't think he was trying to get into the cabin from the fireplace.
So obviously the police and the county coroner were called, and dental records confirmed what we are suspecting, which is that this is the body of Josh Maddux, unfortunately. Chuck had rarely visited this property since it became vacant, but he noted that on the times he had not noticed anything unusual other than animal activity and a bad smell, but they attributed this to animal activity.
Right.
And I believe they had some problems with break-ins. And so they were like, well, I mean, there wasn't anything in there really to steal, so they weren't like concerned about it. Yeah. So the autopsy showed no evidence of drugs in his system, no trauma to the hard tissue, no broken bones, essentially no evidence of foul play. The coroner speculated that Josh had likely died of either dehydration or hypothermia after becoming stuck in the chimney. And on September 28th, he officially ruled the death accidental, stating that he believed Josh's location inside the chimney, quote, appeared to have been a voluntary act to gain access. So essentially, he thought that Josh had got on the roof and climbed into the chimney from above, and concluded that hypothermia was most likely the cause of death based on the temperatures at the time.
I would be willing to believe that if his clothes weren't folded up already inside the house.
Yeah.
And also, if he's, like, upside down, you can't be upside down for a long time and survive.
Yeah, that was also a question I had.
I'm pretty sure you'd die from being upside down before hypothermia would set in enough to kill you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, much like you and me, many people disagreed with this stupid coroner.
I think it may have been accidental, but not as a way of gaining entry. It may have been accidental later on.
Okay.
Once he had already gotten inside the chimney.
Well, let me tell you some other things. So Chuck pointed out that when the chimney had been constructed, he was like, this was an add-on, by the way, in 1990. He had installed a, quote, heavy wire grate hung from steel hooks just inside the chimney's opening to prevent animals and debris and stuff.
Yeah, because I have a video of the dogs staring intently at our fireplace and, like, our closed-off chimney because there's squirrels in there. We've got a problem with squirrels, and Benny is hooking us. He's
nice.
helped us out. So yeah,
so he's not just a bug guy.
No, he's a pest guy.
Nice. So the coroner was like, well, we didn't see a grate, and Chuck was like, yeah, we were demolishing the cabin. They took the metal away first. Yeah. Like,
you start from the top and then the side.
He was like, we were collecting the metal first for scrap. He's like, I'm almost positive that's what they did.
There's a way to demolish things.
Yeah. And the coroner was like, I don't know, maybe. Maybe it rusted away. Maybe they took it away. Maybe it was never there. Who knows? There was also a large wooden breakfast bar table.
It would not have rusted away in 16 years.
I agree.
Absolutely not.
That's not how iron
Because if it was
works.
installed, if it was installed in 1990,
That's not how iron works. So a large wooden breakfast bar table. So like, you know what I'm talking about? Like a table. I'm picturing like a picnic table that you would put like in a breakfast nook that's got like the benches. Okay. So there was one of those that had been ripped from the wall of the cabin and then placed in front of the fireplace as if to block the opening of the fireplace, which is a little suspicious. So then plus the issue with Josh's clothes, the fact that he wasn't wearing them is a little strange.
very concerning.
Yeah, and then the fact that they are inside the cabin.
And folded.
And folded.
That's the part that really is
kind of freaky.
really bothering me, because I'm thinking of, like, you know, in terms of foul play, if someone did harm him, the kind of person that would then
Fold. Yeah,
their
I don't
clothes.
like that. So...
Or maybe Josh was or maybe Josh was forced to remove his clothes, and as he was doing them, he was folding them.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's something that I would do.
Yeah.
If I was ever in just like a horrible situation where, like, at gunpoint, someone was telling me to disrobe,
Yeah.
I would 100%, like, whenever I go to the lady doctor and I do have to fully disrobe.
Yep.
I 100%
clothes.
I fold my clothes and I stack them in a certain way so that, like, there's my pants, and then I put my undergarments, and then I put my shirt on top.
You hide your underwear.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? There's like a stupid video that's like every woman's worst fear, and it's like you're sitting in their gynecologist's office and the doctor comes in and she's like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And then she like runs over to the thing. She's like, Where is it? Oh, is this the underwear that you wore? It's like, why are we scared that our gynecologist is gonna like rummage through our clothes and find our underwear?
It's not a fear that my underwear will be seen. It's more of just like a... No one's supposed to. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
My shirt and pants are okay to be seen, but like...
You know the one time you don't do it and you leave it in a messy pile is the one time they're gonna have to go behind that curtain for something.
Oh, it's always just in a chair right there. So, like, there's my chair with my purse, or really, in my case, my knitting bag with my knitting. And then on the chair in front of the knitting bag is my folded up clothes that I have worn. And under the chair is where I scoop my shoes. And then she walks in and walks right by all my stuff. And she sits on her stool and I'm on the table. And we just chat.
Chat while things happen.
Yeah, just chat while she feels me up and invades my personal spaces.
That's the best conversation, is the conversation you have with your gynecologist while she's giving you a breast exam.
See, my thing is, I just go in there like guns blazing. Like, let's just talk, and we're just gonna just chat through all of this. So we just pretend that we're just having a nice normal conversation, and that your hands are not in intimate places.
Yep. Just get your answers ready, get your questions ready, have some topics ready in case you run out of stuff to say.
Oh, you know, just...
Very smart. And
just level above small talk, because small talk actually makes things more awkward. But...
Oh, thanks for reminding
also, all our female listeners, this is your reminder.
Yeah, because you know it's going to be 6 months out before they can get you in.
And all of our male listeners, if you're old enough, might be time for that prostate exam.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I don't know how we got to talking about this, but sure.
I don't either.
The folded clothes.
The folded clothes.
It really upsets me. And so, like, because I'm having a lot of, like, obvious, like, okay, anytime we find a corpse that does not have clothes, my immediate, like, knee-jerk thing is, maybe it was all natural fibers, and they just naturally decompose. Like, that's my... When you said that, you know, he was only wearing, like, a thermal shirt, I'm like, well, if he was wearing, you know, because it's been, what?
7 years.
7 years? Oh, that's probably still too soon. I mean, you know, given the conditions, maybe it's possible. But that's always my first, like, if it's all natural fibers, they could have just disintegrated. Just decomposed, and that's why Because then the next rational or realistic thought when you're talking about a body not wearing clothes, everyone's mind goes to the same thing, and you don't want it to be there.
Yeah. So another thing that people pointed out was it would have been nearly impossible to get into. So now we're thinking like, okay, if there's a grate blocking the top of the chimney, the only way he could have gotten in is through the fireplace, and it would have been nearly impossible to get into that position
On his own.
on your own. And then highly implausible and improbable that he would have started out inside the cabin, taken off most of his clothes, folded them, left the cabin, gotten onto the roof,
climbed down into the...
somehow removed the metal grate, or the grate was missing for some reason that doesn't make sense also, and then got into the chimney. Like, that is too many things that
Also, was there any sign of, like, animal activity on his remains? Like,
I don't think so.
Because if there was no grate, then absolutely squirrels, rats, mice, etc. would have gotten into that chimney. 100%.
That actually is a good point, yeah.
And rats absolutely would have, eaten or, bit at. There would be very obvious signs of animal activity. If nothing else, there would be droppings.
Yeah, that's true. They didn't note any of that. I did see...
Which means that the grate was probably on,
Yeah.
preventing any other critters and animal activity from entering.
I did read something that said, I believe it was just the legs that were beginning to mummify, which makes me wonder if it had something to do with, like, the rest of his body kind of, not creating a seal, but, like, blocking off a lot of...
Airflow?
Yeah.
Well, no, because you kind of need that dry air flow for mummifying.
I don't know.
I wonder if it has something to do with him being upside down and the lack of blood.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
In his extremities.
Yeah. Okay, so people are pointing these things out, and then the coroner is also pointing out, like, okay, but there's also not any real hard evidence to point to homicide. There's not any physical evidence on or in the body, meaning no bullet or knife wounds. There's no duct tape or rope or anything like that. There was no sign. They said there was no signs of struggle, like of a struggle in the cabin, but then they were like, but it was also being demolished. So like,
a lot of that
hard
evidence
to tell.
is also probably
at
least disrupted.
Yes.
And also, if they'd had an issue with break-ins, like,
how
do you tell the difference between...
like what? And then I read somewhere that there could have been and this is again back to what I'm calling our side, which is not the coroner's side.
Team logic.
Team logic.
Versus team, I made a decision and I'm not going back on it, stubborn man.
Yes. Someone said that it was possible that his cause of death could have been something like strangulation or suffocation, and that wouldn't have shown up on an autopsy.
Again, depending on the condition of the remains, 100% he could have been suffocated.
Yeah. And I didn't know if, like, strangulation would have not shown up depending on the condition of the remains.
Yeah. Okay. So, depending on, how much skin was, available and visible, there's no telling. Because, like, I've seen episodes of Bones where they've actually had basically a mummified body that they were able to, like, essentially rehydrate.
Oh.
And that's how they found the evidence.
Oh, okay.
Was because of some bruising on the skin that they were able to rehydrate.
Okay.
So, but that's a television show.
Yeah, true.
I mean, while a lot of it is based in science, I'm sure there's a lot of times where they have stretched the truth of science for to make the story work.
Yes.
So any forensic scientists want to help us out with this?
Yeah. So there was also some opinions on Reddit.
Of course. Reddit is the place you go for opinions.
Specifically, one guy. And I didn't write down his username because it wasn't a username that was, like, easy to say. And he never made his, like, actual identity known But he never deleted his post. So he made this big long post, and I'm going to explain what
Is he
said.
on our side? That
Yes.
Greg is Josh's dad. I'm just kidding.
Well,
Let me listen to what he said, and then I'll make my guess.
So he talked about a suspect who had been made known to police by several called-in tips. And this suspect was a man named Andy Newman. So the people who had called in these tips alleged that Andy had been the last person seen with Josh. And, like, I think some people were like, hey, what about this guy? And investigators were like, okay, yes, but he was, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. They said of the tipsters that they were unable to give, quote, times and specifics. And also, quote, we can't generate stuff that goes back 7 years. So essentially they were just giving really vague information, I think. Also, investigators were really skeptical that if Josh had been murdered, that it was only one person. They thought that if it was homicide, that there would be at least 2 people involved based on what we said about how hard it would be to get him into the chimney. Okay, so this Reddit poster knew both Andy and Josh in high school. So he's like up here. He said after graduation, Andy had gone to live in New Mexico. And he heard that Andy and Josh had been hanging out right before that, and that Josh had perhaps been planning to go to New Mexico with Andy, or at least visit him. Yeah. So Andy goes to New Mexico, and while he was there, he became friends with a man named James Walito. And James was a caretaker for a man named Anthony Schneider. And one day, while Andy was hanging out with James and Anthony at their apartment, James went to take a shower, and when he got out of the shower, Anthony was dead. He had been stabbed to death, and Andy was gone. And Andy was later found and arrested for murder. Apparently, when he was arrested, he told police that he had killed a woman in Taos, New Mexico. Taos, thank you. And, quote, stuffed her body in a barrel. Don't love those.
Nope.
That terminology. There was a woman in Taos that had been found. I don't know if that she was in a barrel, but she was in some small container, murdered.
She had been stuffed into somewhere.
She had been stuffed into a container. But someone else was already in custody for that murder, so they didn't feel like changing that. So Andy wasn't looked at for that. I know.
Like, I understand that a lot of times people will confess to multiple crimes because ultimately that will, like, slow the investigations down because they'll have to be like, okay, well, now we gotta go investigate that. And before we can even, like, go to trial, we gotta, investigate all these other crimes that you're, committing or claiming to have committed.
Yeah. According to the Reddit poster, James, the caretaker, died in a bar fight sometime later. And so the murder case was dropped because he was their main witness. And they were like, well, we don't really have that much evidence now.
And the guy who was murdered was old anyway, so we don't care about the elderly.
Yeah.
They don't need justice.
Yeah. And almost all of this is verifiable by, like, court records and news articles. So it's all pretty much true. The poster claims that he and some others went to the police with their suspicions about Andy because they knew that Josh had been hanging out with him either right before this murder, like the murder of Anthony, or right after. It's unclear. But they knew that Josh and Andy had been hanging out. And then they're like, oh, Andy killed someone. Oh, Josh went missing. Hey, police, maybe you should look at this guy.
Let's investigate this lead.
Yes.
Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's not nothing.
Yes. But he says that police ignored them and didn't look into Andy Newman fully.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. He also claims that people
Sounds like work.
Yeah. He also claims that people were calling in to report, quote, having heard rumors that Andy was bragging about having, quote, put Josh in a hole. So, and like, I don't know, hearing rumors about someone claiming to say something, I want to be careful about that just because it's like,
if I hear,
that's like third-hand information.
If I hear, like, oh, so-and-so told me that so-and-so heard this other person, bragging about murder, and I'd be like, I'm not going to police with that.
Yeah.
If I hear, oh, I totally killed this person, I'm going to the police.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am a snitch.
Yeah.
Come at me with your stitches.
Exactly.
Give you stitches. Just kidding.
Andy Newman did spend some time in a mental institution, so there is a lot of evidence that he was not mentally well. He was battling some kind of mental illnesses, but he didn't stay in one. Like, I think he was kind of in and out. And the latest record I could find of him was in 2019 when he assaulted 3 officers while serving time for an unrelated crime. So I don't know if he's still incarcerated or not, but he has been in and out of prisons, essentially. But I don't know that he has ever been, like, really investigated for Josh's disappearance. Or death, I guess.
Yeah.
There are some other possible theories about what happened to Josh. One of them was because, so they said there were no drugs in his system, and his family said he doesn't use drugs, right? So,
of course your family thinks that.
Yeah, so one is, well, he could have been using drugs, and your family just doesn't know because your family doesn't know everything about you.
That's right.
Especially, why would you tell your dad and your sisters that if you were trying drugs? And also, if the body was too degraded, some things might not show up.
So that's my question there for any kind of, forensic scientist or, any kind of pathologist or anything like that is, I mean, what stays, like, what evidence? I mean, I feel like you'd have to have, like, hard drugs and poisons and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you were tripping on shrooms and you had a bad trip, like, I could see getting yourself into a bad situation like that because you're having a really bad trip.
Yeah.
But since shrooms are, a natural thing, like, they don't live in your body and in your system, you know, whereas, like, some, especially, like, long-term drug use, like any kind of medication, leaves, trace of it, or if not the actual, like, oh, we found it in a tissue sample, then there's other, like, evidence of long-term drug use, like, oh, well, the bone density suggests that he was a long-time user of this, but again, if he was also a long-time user of anything, his family would have known.
Or, like, his friends or someone would have known. Like, someone in his life would have been able to say, well, he may have said that, but this one time we tried this thing together, you know. Like, someone would have at least come forward, I think, at this point. Another theory that I think is really interesting is that he was suffering from hypothermia. I was going to bring this up, but I'm waiting. So, I don't quite... The only thing that doesn't really make sense to me is did he go into the cabin and become locked in the cabin or what? Or I guess maybe it was still very cold in the cabin. But if he was suffering from hypothermia, paradoxical undressing happens in the later stages of hypothermia, which is where you are so cold that your brain, I think, tells you that you're hot or you start to feel hot, so you start to undress.
Yes.
And then something called terminal burrowing can start to happen, which is where you seek out small covered spaces to hide. So even though
So this was ultimately my theory so far.
So even though it does seem like it would be very difficult to get into that position, it probably isn't ultimately impossible.
And again, because of the inconsistencies of the reports of his position, the likelihood that his position was altered in the demolition process prior to discovery.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then the other part of this is that breakfast bar might have just been moved later and is completely unrelated. That might have just been someone broke in 2 years later and they were on drugs or whatever, and they were just, smashing shit to smash it, and you just move stuff around. So I'm very interested in that theory just because it does kind of make sense.
That one seems most plausible to me. I'm thinking that he went out for a walkabout in nature and woods. He may have gotten lost or turned around and found this cabin and decided to stay, and maybe it got a lot colder than he was expecting and couldn't get warm, started having some hypothermia. Because, the undressing. And, again, the clothes being folded like that.
Yeah.
Either, if it was foul play.
Yeah.
That somebody either did that to his clothes.
Yeah.
Or forced him to disrobe and he intentionally folded himself.
Or if he just disrobed and left them, someone also could have come in later and found a bunch of clothes laying there and decided to fold them. Who
knows? But I think the hypothermia is most likely, starting to disrobe because of that. And I think that he probably did shove himself into that fireplace because, it's a smaller enclosed space. So, and brick, it's a brick fireplace. It's supposed to radiate heat.
Yeah.
And hold and absorb and radiate heat. So he's got his body heat, so get in that small space and kind of, try and preserve body heat.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to think. And especially because that makes sense to me a lot. The fact that he was so close to home, like it was 2 blocks from his house. I mean, I know that there are so many other ways to explain it. Like, he could have been out. Maybe he found some mushrooms growing and ate those. I mean, like, it could be a combination of things. Maybe he was with someone and they both took some shrooms and, they were both doing stupid stuff. And, I mean, but the thing is that, like, if it was someone else, unless they come forward, like, we're never gonna know.
Yeah.
Because no one else was there.
See, it's one of those times, like, if his family obviously had, I guess, were able to find their own personal closure and kind of, like, move on and just kind of accept, like, you know what? Yeah, him just kind of going on walkabout, like, maybe he'll walk right back into our lives one day. Like, maybe we'll just see him again. Like, if they were able to find some sense of peace, I would rather just stay like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess even if you have that sense of peace, like, you'd always still, I guess, wonder and still think. So I guess maybe having an actual answer, even if it's much more upsetting than what you'd convinced yourself of.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the coroner's official ruling on his cause of death remains accidental, which means that law enforcement can't actually investigate it any further because it is in the coroner's, like, jurisdiction or whatever. And he would have to change the cause of death to either undetermined or homicide in order for
any kind of a case to open.
Yeah. And he still maintains his belief that Josh came down the chimney on his own.
I don't think Josh came down the chimney.
Yeah, I don't think he came down it at
He's
all.
wrong there. I don't disagree too much on the accidental.
Yeah. On October 17th of 2015, Josh's family held a memorial service for him at the Woodland Park Community Church, and he was buried next to his brother at Woodland Park Cemetery. And unfortunately, that is the story of Zach Maddux. I'm sorry it was a sad one.
That's really sad.
I know, but
it is there's a lot of very strange variables there.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, just because, I mean, I'm thinking back to the position that I contorted myself into. Like, if anything, if I was, again, I guess if like you're going through hypothermia and you're to the point where you are, disrobing and shoving yourself into a tight place, like, I guess so much of your brain is already like shutting off.
Yeah.
And like survival instincts are probably, I guess, things are just a little wacky. I guess you're just probably not in your right mind.
Yeah.
Like, I guess if I'm going to burrow myself into a chimney, because one of my other thoughts was like, what if he was in there and maybe he was just enjoying having this cabin to himself, and he was like, if this is my own space, this is my castle, I'm gonna walk around naked.
Oh yeah.
And then he kind of heard someone coming and was like, oh, I need to get dressed, and started like put on his shirt and realized he didn't have time to get the rest of his clothes before he needed to hide because he knows he's not supposed to be there, and so maybe he climbed up into the chimney.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I almost wish that there had been signs of, like, I would feel better if the coroner had found, like, signs of strangulation or, like, a gunshot wound or something, and it had been clear that he had just been murdered and put in the chimney. Because I know it's got to be really hard for his family, A, to not know how he ended up in there.
Did he do it himself?
Yeah.
And if so, why?
And then,
or did somebody else do this?
Yeah.
And if so, why and who?
Yeah. And then B, knowing that no matter what the answer to that first question is, the answer to the second question is that he didn't die quickly. He died slowly. Because that is something the coroner said. He was like, it wasn't a fast death. He either died of dehydration or hypothermia, or, which I don't know why he didn't, and maybe it's because I don't know how much your organs survive after that, but spoiler for our bonus episode, but I think when you're upside down that much, one of the things that happens is, like, essentially your heart can't continue pumping the blood, whatever.
Your heart basically gives out because it needs to work harder to pump because when you're upright, you've got the benefit of gravity to carry the blood to your lower extremities.
Yeah. So I'm assuming maybe his heart didn't show any evidence of that
strain.
Being how he died. But
again, we need an Emmy. We need a forensic scientist, a forensic anthropologist.
Yeah.
We need bones.
Emily Deschanel, is that her name? Emily? Call us.
You played one on TV. You should totally be able to have the answer to this.
Oh, well.
Well, if you want to see the pictures of adorable Josh, you can check out our Facebook and Instagram at The Tales We Tell Podcast. If you want to see pictures but don't do the social media, check out our website, thetaleswetellpodcast.com. And if you want to support us and get yourself some sweet, sweet swag, you should check out our Redbubble store. Search The Tales We Tell. We've got several different logos, and you can put that shit on anything. Keep in mind, the holidays are fast approaching.
They make great gifts.
They
I
make
usually get one for someone
gifts.
every year.
And if you want to support us but you don't need the stuff, you can become patrons at patreon.com. You get early access, commercial-free listening, and sometimes fun bonus content.
And our undying love.
As always, our undying love and devotion.
Yes. And I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving if you celebrate. And I hope you have someone to celebrate with and something to be thankful for.
Yes.
I'm trying very hard to focus on good things to be thankful for. And
instead of all the stress of hosting 20,000 people.
Yeah. I'm actually not super stressed about that now that my house is not a construction zone of my own making.
Hey, your house looks great.
Thank you. I'm now getting into excited mode. So
good.
It'll be great. But we'll see you guys after the holidays.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, not all of them. We'll be around
We'll
between
see.
now and Christmas.
We'll see you after the first holiday.
Yeah. But we will be taking a Christmas break.
Yes.
Once we figure out when that is. We'll let you know.
Once we look at our calendars, we'll let you guys know. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.